Good evening, everyone. I hope it was beautiful where you are. Of course, Benny said it's raining where he was, but I love the rain myself, right? So, heading right into Collectively Rewilding tonight is all about reading some interesting things, and we're working alongside the garden planner wherever we can for the internal garden planner here, as well as that which we'll share externally at certain events and things like that. And so what we have started following through since I'm doing the Gardenary Garden Consulting certification is modeling a lot of the things after what I'm learning with that specifically so that I can more easily talk about it when I'm out doing that garden consulting. And the reason that I chose the company that I chose, that being Gardenary, is I agree with a good portion of what Nicole Burke has to say. We talked about this recently. One of the things that she talks about is that she does not agree with physical mulch such as hay or wood chips, something like that. She thinks that it leaves your plants prone to molds and mildew and pests, and that the decomposition of especially the wood chips takes nitrogen from the soil. I really love both living mulch and that physical mulch that I'm not sure how to so easily distinctify, but the wood chips, the hay, I love both of those methods. They're just amazing as far as I'm concerned. And so we'll test out both methods going forth in the gardens that we're going to be building here as a part of the Collectively Rewilding garden instead of a Walipini. So I was out looking to find the instructions for the beds that Nicole Burke specifically talks about. And it came up as an article from Gardenary when I was just talking about raised beds, getting some very solid instructions. I like to have things that I can print and read. It really helps me to follow through on things. And so there it was, the article I tried to find in the gardenary.com library. I couldn't find it. It was too far back, and Gemini found it for me. So that led me down the rabbit hole. And since we're already reading Leaves, Roots, and Fruits by Nicole Burke, we're also reading the articles that she wrote that I pulled up while I was going down that particular rabbit hole. All right. And so that was a neat article that my mother shared earlier from the Cool Down that is something I've been interested in for a long time. I only had recently heard about rain gardens in the last 5 years or so, and I was very interested in it and planning on putting something like that in, but all I've ever seen really was discussion about plants that would go in a rain garden. And I just had a feeling there was more to it, but it wasn't something I was ready to start researching deeply or put in place myself. So I hadn't delved too deeply into the topic. And this article that my mother found, that Anita found, is not only a visual of what to do with the ground, but a discussion about the whole thing and really great material. So definitely check that out. I really loved the concept that backed up the whole idea of what you're doing when you're putting these plants into the ground. So definitely check that out. We've got it featured here in Collectively Rewilding. And now let's open up the Gardenary information. All right, and we're starting with the ground up kind of smaller to large, and that really works so well with the season that we're going into. The colder weather is coming. We're, about midway through fall, right? And we really think of the beginning of December as when winter is really fully starting, but it doesn't actually start until December 21st, 20th, depending on the year, right? And so we're getting into the middle of fall, starting towards that colder and colder period, depending on where you're living. And many of us aren't going to be putting seeds in the ground to grow produce and eat from any longer this year, but we can still bring that inside. And so we have the micros and the sprouts, as well as things like 1 garden salad pots, and we've got that all in our garden planner for the month. Coming up, all of our Monday classes that are based around that garden planner. It's going to be really fun, really interesting for anyone wanting to work alongside multiple things that we can do in our homes to grow something and harvest it. And the microgreens and sprouts are really quick harvests. You're talking 7 to 21 days as a turnaround for most of these things. So within a month, you can start harvesting them and eating off of them. And I think that that's really encouraging for anyone that's had any kind of struggle or difficulty in their garden experiences, right, across the board. That's a really good place to start. And Candace has already talked about the fact that he likes to grow, I believe it was the sprouts, right? You weren't.
Yes, like
Mhm.
in my
Sprouts don't grow in the soil and the microgreens do, right? This isn't an area that I've spent a lot of time in myself.
it depends. Some microgreens, they don't have
There
to.
was I did look it up. So let's just look it up as a definition, right? Thank you, emoji. How funny. And a difference between sprout and microgreen. Sprouts are the entire germinated seed, including root, stem, and seed coat, which are eaten in a few days. Microgreens are the young leafy seedlings, and you only eat the stem and leaves, uh, leaving it in soil or substrate for. Okay, so yes, sprouts you are not putting in soil. You're going to eat like the whole thing. It's the microgreens are going to be grown in soil, and you can kind of keep eating off of them for a little bit, I believe. Either way, they're considered living food. And so that's what we're going to explore over this next month, those types of topics, and see how much we can fit into each week. We're a little bit behind already, right? We've already had one Monday class. And so we're going to fit 4 weeks worth of material into 3 weeks and see how doable that is, to see if even having that fourth week is going to make what we have in there something that can be accomplished, what we need to kind of work on. And that'll give us a good idea as we're going forward through the months of the planner, how much a material will fit into 4 weeks, right? So kind of fun overall topic there. And we have that laid out in our garden planner, but that was an area that I didn't know as much about. And I was already reading through it and interested and thinking about how I'm going to walk through this with everyone doing the majority of the things that we talk about. Not everything. Not everything is going to be something that anybody is going to do. It's what each one of us are interested in doing in our particular gardening journey, right? And so, lots of fun. Let's go ahead and read the first article here. And that's going to be the only supplies you really need to grow microgreens at home. And we will go ahead and copy this and share it into Collectively Rewilding for anyone who does want to read along as we go or look at it after we're done. So we'll put it down here in Nature's Spotlight in the gardenary space. All right. We'll post that and notify everyone. And there we go. All right, continuing on. The only supplies you really need to grow microgreens at home. In this article, the benefits of growing microgreens at home. Here's what you'll need. Full supply list to grow microgreens. The best trays for growing microgreens at home. The best growing medium for microgreens. The best water source for growing microgreens at home. The best seeds for growing microgreens at home. The best artificial light source for growing microgreens at home. Other tools needed for growing microgreens, and then you're ready to start growing your own microgreens. All right. I don't think we'll read that again next time, right? Fleshing it out, seeing how these articles work. The benefits of growing microgreens at home. Have you been looking for the perfect plants to grow in your basement? Plants that you can grow year round, no matter if there's a chance of frost outside. Plants that aren't even affected by the weather at all. Plants that are super nutritious? What about plants that are cheap to start yourself, but that cost you $10 to buy in a small amount at the farmer's market or grocery store? Plants that you can harvest right on your kitchen table without making a mess. If you're saying yes, 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 then microgreens are the perfect fit for you. Growing microgreens was my salvation when I was living in Houston and missing my salad greens during the extreme heat of summer. Since moving to Chicago, which might as well be the Arctic as far as I'm concerned, microgreens have given me little bursts of joy even in the deepest days of winter when nothing outside is green. Since we're catching plants in the first stages of their growth, we can harvest microgreens in 5 to 10 days. I'd say these little guys are the real fast food. Not only can you grow microgreens just about anywhere and any time of year, they're also the easiest way for each of us to become a gardener. You know those huge outdoor gardens overflowing with ripening fruit, draping herbs, and climbing vines? Well, they have tons of things to enjoy about them, but they're also really hard to set up and maintain. So many of us think we need to start there, that if we can't grow tomatoes or eggplants, we're not real gardeners. When really, we can very easily begin to produce our own incredibly nutritious food with very little setup or skills required. The best way to get started in the garden is actually indoors with a simple setup of seeds, soil, water, and a little bit of light. All right, so she's got it all pictured there for us. Here's what you'll need. Full supply list to grow microgreens. If you have enough space to have a kitchen sink, you have enough room to set up and start growing some microgreens. This type of gardening requires just a little bit of legwork to get started, but then only a couple of minutes of your attention each day after that. You will need the following items: a wide tray with drainage holes, a wide tray without drainage holes, big enough to encompass the tray that does have holes. So you want to have one tray, good sized tray, has holes, and then you set that into the next size up tray, trying to keep it all kind of minimized, right, for a smaller space when needed. Growing medium, water source, lots and lots of seeds, artificial light source, hand rake or small hoe to level soil, plant tags or labels, kitchen scissors, mycorrhizae, that's fungi that is very good in your soil, and that's optional, a small fan. All right, microgreen supply list has that all listed here. The best trays for growing microgreens at home. All right, and that's of course according to her, and she lets you know that she does have Amazon affiliate links in here. You can begin with a very simple setup to grow microgreens and eventually graduate to something a bit more sophisticated to increase your production and keep your sprouts happier. If it's your first time growing microgreens, you can start with materials you probably have already hanging out in a cabinet or junk drawer, simple plastic containers. Once you've fallen in love with microgreens and determined to grow them every week, it's worth it to invest in trays designed for microgreens or make your own. You'll need 2 trays, one with drainage holes and one without. Drainage holes are ideal because these seedlings really don't want their roots to be sitting in water for a long period of time. The tray with drainage holes will be the top tray that holds the soil. Because microgreens have shallow roots, this tray only needs to be 1 to 2 inches deep. If you look at the trays I use, you might think they're too shallow to grow much of anything, but I found that microgreens can thrive with just a little bit of soil. Also, you won't be able to reuse the soil you put in these trays until after it has been broken down in your compost. So shallow trays limit your soil usage to just what's needed. The top tray will be placed inside the non-draining bottom tray, the tray without drainage holes, so that it can hold water. The best growing medium for microgreens. You'll fill your top tray with soil. People recommend all kinds of different growing mediums for microgreens. I use a simple organic seed starting mix, which is lighter and easier for young roots to push into than regular potting soil. I try to avoid using non-renewable resources as much as possible in my garden. Most seed starting mixes I found at the store have a peat moss base, which is not ideal. Other mixes have coco coir. There's some debate over which is more sustainable, peat moss or coco coir, but I try to stick with coco coir. That's something that Ethel talked to us about in another class, and I agree with. both Nicole Burke and Ethel Grant that those are better things to utilize than peat moss, or that that's better to use than peat moss. Combine your seed starting mix with water in a bowl, equal parts each by volume. You want your soil to be nice and moist before you spread it across your tray. As I mentioned above, you will start over with fresh seed starting mix for each batch of microgreens. Your spent soil can go into your compost and be used later as nutrient-dense organic matter for your salad greens or vegetable garden. The best water source for growing microgreens at home. We don't need anything fancy or complicated to water our little plant babies. I use a simple pitcher. I keep it filled with water and then set it aside to settle and become room temperature. I use this pitcher just for watering my microgreens. You can also use a small watering can or a spray bottle. And just for those of you who, like myself, have the water softener, let's just check and verify, because I believe that that was probably a bad idea and I probably did the research then. But is it bad to water plants from a water source with a soft water system? And then I believe yes. Yes, it is bad to water plants with softened water because it contains sodium, right? It's a salt that you put into your softeners that can build up in the soil, causing harm to plants by making it difficult for them to absorb water and nutrients. All right, so if you're like me, you do need to have water from a source that doesn't have that salt buildup in it. All right. Okay. The best seeds for growing microgreens at home. There are many big companies that sell packets labeled to be grown as microgreens. Let me clarify that there's nothing special about microgreen seeds. In other words, these are the same seeds you would grow to that you would buy to grow into a full-size plant. The only difference is that they'll sell you way more seeds in a packet marked for microgreens. When you're growing microgreens, each seed represents one small green that you will harvest. This is not like a tomato plant that will produce dozens of fruit from one seed. It's a simple 1-to-1 ratio. So if you buy a package with only 15 seeds inside, you're going to grow enough microgreens for a really sad little bowl. Many different leafy greens and vegetables can be grown as microgreens. Experiment with different seeds for flavor and look for packs with a variety mix of seeds. And that's what we talked about when I was talking to you guys about microgreens the last time. And we read the little ingredients list, the seed list off of the packs of plants that I have for microgreens. The best artificial light source for growing microgreens at home. Microgreens need at least 4 hours of strong direct light per day to thrive. Ambient light from a kitchen window works okay for growing microgreens, but it won't produce as consistent or reliable results as an artificial light source. Microgreens want the light very close to them and tend to grow leggier when the light is further away. That means the best lighting situation includes artificial lights that can be raised or lowered towards the tray. My setup is a full spectrum light that hangs from a shelving unit, and I recently purchased a new light source that can be clipped to the side of a table or shelf. Oh my goodness, I need one of those so badly. Mine is on my shelving unit as well, and it's too far away from my geraniums. And if it could clip onto a table or shelf, that's exactly what I need. How convenient. The wire coils of its 3 wand lights allow for easy maneuverability over my growing trays. You can create your own setup. I've seen some really functional uses of IKEA carts with added growing lights, but know that there are plenty of easy and relatively inexpensive done-for-you systems to take advantage of. Oh, that's basically what I have. It won't clip to my table or to my shelf. So, good thought though. Other tools needed for growing microgreens. A small hand rake or gardening hoe will help you level the soil before scattering your microgreen seeds. If you're a baker, you could also use a rolling pin. Plant tags are necessary to remember which type of seeds you planted where, especially if you're growing multiple varieties. You can buy plant tags, write on popsicle sticks, or label painter's tape and stick it to the side of the tray. Have a clean pair of kitchen scissors ready for the fun part, harvesting your baby greens. Adding mycorrhizae to your organic seed starting mix is optional. The fungal hyphae inside mycorrhizae aid the growing plant's ability to obtain water and nutrients from the surrounding soil, Bonus, when you put that soil into your compost heap, that same interaction, that same type of fungal life will continue to interact in your soil. Finally, if you're growing your microgreens in a closed space, for me, it's the basement, place a small fan nearby to increase airflow and prevent rot. All right, excellent. And then you guys can check out the guide to growing microgreens if you're interested, but it does look like it costs $5, right? She's definitely out there as an entrepreneur, and she has a ton of different ideas about it, and they're all pretty interesting. So very interesting woman, and I'm learning quite a bit from taking her course, and I am enjoying it quite a bit. So definitely speak highly of that there. This is the video that I need to edit just a little bit before I put it up on YouTube. And let's pull this up here and stop sharing the screen so that we can jump into leaves, roots, and fruit. All right. We are on to water within the chapter about, I believe, yes, setup for success. Water. By now you've selected the most well-lit location, set up the perfect space, timed your planting, and added great soil. Water is the next factor to consider. Yes, plants can feed themselves, but they can't do so without water. Nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are absorbed by plants only when dissolved in water. Water and minerals enter a plant through the roots, and water transport nutrients through the plant in a process called transpiration. And much of that water, up to 98% in some plants, eventually exits through the leaves by means of transpiration. As water evaporates, it helps the plant maintain its proper temperature. This is why consistent watering is important. A plant works hard to move water from its roots to its top leaves, branches, and flowers. So the bigger the plant you grow, the more water it'll need. Not just for food delivery, water also makes plants strong. Without enough water in the cells, the leaves droop. Tell me I'm not the only one who's seen this happen. Water gives the plant structure and strength to support its own weight. As you'll see in the chapters ahead, with each new step in the garden plant's watering, needs increase. Whether your plants need 1 inch or 4 inches of water per week, consistency in delivering that water is key. Rainwater is best, so track your weekly rainfall and capture as much rainwater as possible in a rain barrel or large bucket. Each week, when there's no rain, it'll be up to you to deliver supplemental water to your plants by watering by hand with a hose or watering can, connecting your garden to a spigot, or installing a formal irrigation system. Strive to water in the early mornings so that plant foliage has time to dry out throughout the day, and aim the water on the roots, not the leaves. If you use a hose, select a setting on your spray attachment that imitates soft raindrops. A spigot connection with a drip hose and timer is a great automated setup if you don't have a formal irrigation system. Your plants will get consistent water, and the timer can easily be adjusted as needed. Most hardware store kits have drip irrigation kits available. Nutrient needs at each step. Steps, stage of growth, important nutrients, and fertilizer options. So for step 1, sprouts, the important nutrient, would be nitrogen, though adequate levels of all nutrients are critical at this phase. Fertilizer options are cottonseed meal, alfalfa meal, chicken or rabbit manure, coffee grounds, and feather meal. For the 2nd to 5th stage, leaves, stems, and roots, root-supporting nutrients like phosphorus and potassium. And for fertilizer options, kelp meal, green sand, rock dust, coffee grounds, and wood ash. 6 through 8 stages are flowers, phosphorus, potassium, and calcium. And the fertilizer options are rock dust, fishbone meal, bone meal, bat guano, chicken, and rabbit manure. And also, fruit is 6 through 8 as they go together, flowers and fruit, right? Depending on the type of plant. So for flowers, it was phosphorus, potassium, and calcium. For fruit, it's primarily phosphorus and potassium. And so you use bone meal, bat guano, fishbone meal, or seaweed in that case. Going back to water, alternatively, A formal irrigation system connects water lines to your home's vacuum breaker and a timer to deliver water at specific times and intervals throughout the week. Know that your watering system will have to be adjusted as you move through the seasons or if you notice issues, such as the garden surface looking dry or plant leaves that are cracked or wilted. Taking care of the watering is a key way to make sure your plants can take care of themselves. And now we have care, and I think that's going to take us into the next chapter, but perhaps I'm misunderstanding as I thought that this was going to be that setup, but I'm trying to follow her thought process. It's a little bit, how shall I put it, all at once and also staggered. So it's very interesting. All right, so no, this is not going to be the last subsection here, but this is called care. Now you know plants know how to grow. They feed themselves, they're tough, they can't walk but still know how to travel, and they can reproduce themselves again and again. So what could they possibly need from you? Set your plants up for success, and they won't need much. If you follow this book's plan for setting up each plant in the way it grows best, you'll find that tending your plants isn't stressful. In the same way that the needs for space, sunlight, and water increase as you go up each step in the garden, the needs for tending grow as your plants do. To grow sprouts, step 1, it's a simple matter of rinsing the seeds a few times a day. But to harvest small fruit, plan on pruning, fertilizing, trellising, and fighting off pests. Don't worry, you'll be ready for that responsibility once you get there. You can expect to spend an hour per week when growing fruiting plants and just a few minutes per week, mostly for harvesting, when simply growing leaves. There's a plant for every schedule, even the really busy ones. Beyond choosing the best planting setup, which I'll detail in a later chapter, care for each plant consists of maintaining the right inputs. This includes ensuring the plant's leaves are getting enough sunlight, being certain plants have plenty of space to spread out, taking care that plants never dry out or stay soaked, and, finally, adding extra nourishment to the soil when you know plants need a nutritional boost to make it to the next stage. Your main job is to be sure each plant has what it's needing to do its job. Young plants, old plants, and plants suffering from disease or stress will demand a little more from you, mostly in the way of protection from pests. Stay on the offense is my theory on tending plants. In other words, focus on the positive inputs you bring to the garden rather than dwelling on the negative. The premise is simple. A little positive attention goes a long way. Here are 3 ways to stay on the offense. Work with nature through an ecosystem. When your garden has a need, before you step in to make a change, first think of a way nature could provide the solution. Does your garden have a water runoff problem? Add rain gardens to absorb the excess water. Are your plants frequently damaged by wind? Add trees or shrubs to form a windbreak. Bring in flowers and native plants so there are more beneficial insects and pollinators in the garden. Install a water feature so animals don't come looking for water among your fruit. And when there's a pest issue, consider what prey animal you could attract to control the pest, or if you could offer the pest something else found in nature to distract it from your garden. Working with, not against nature in the garden through an ecosystem is key for garden care. I think you guys can have an idea of why I love her thought process so much. Check on plants regularly to prune, harvest, or clean. Consistency in tending to your plants is key to less stress. If you schedule a few minutes with your plants each day, you'll notice when one could use a little more water, pruning, or nutrients. You'll be able to tend as needed right away before larger problems develop. Use protective covers. So that's the 3rd item, right? Let me just read those since they're not clearly identified for you guys. The first step is work with nature through an ecosystem. The second step is check on plants regularly to prune, harvest, or clean. And now the final step. Use protective covers. Pests, big and small, have their eyes on your garden. The simple, most effective way to protect your plants from pests is with protective covers. Things like cloches to protect greens from rabbits, hoops and mesh netting to block small insects, hardware cloth cages to protect fruit from squirrel or birds, hardware cloth lining on the bottoms of beds to prevent underground rodents from digging into the garden, and, when necessary, a tall fence around the garden to protect plants from large pests like deer. Even when you are on the offense, though, pests and disease may still find a way in. You'll know that pests like caterpillars, borers, beetles, aphids, grasshoppers, flies, mealybugs, slugs, and whiteflies have found the weakest plants in your garden when you spot holes in leaves or fruit. Disease is usually evident from changes in the color or texture of leaves, stems, or fruit. It's best to act at the first sign of attack, but before reaching for a harsh spray, try a simple tool first. A clean pair of pruners. Prune away damaged and discolored leaves on the plant. Check the soiled area and the undersides of leaves where pests like to hide. If you spot a pest, toss it into a bowl of soapy water. Once you've cleaned around the plant, add some fresh compost. Watch the plant that is under attack for a couple of days. If treatment is necessary, the goal is to be as gentle as possible. Spraying with an insecticidal soap will typically take care of most insects. If that doesn't work, you can apply garlic oil spray. For caterpillars, there's BT spray. For slugs and snails, there's diatomaceous earth. But sprays and solutions are definitely a last resort. I've found that getting the setup right in my garden space and checking on the plants regularly goes much further than sprays and soap in keeping pests at bay. The steps ahead. Now that you're all set up and acquainted with the LRF system, leaves, roots, and fruit, it's finally time to start growing, well, leaves, roots, and fruit. Here's a roadmap of the journey ahead. In steps 1 through 3 of this book, you grow leaves. The first steps focus on plants you'll grow for leafy harvest, including sprouts, herbs, and salad greens. Plants grown for their leaves can produce a harvest in as few as 5 to 21 days, between 45 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, with 4 hours of sunlight per day and just 1 square foot of space. Plants featured in steps 4 through 5 will be grown for their roots. These plants require 35 or more days, at least 6 sunlight hours, and a little more space in the garden. The fruit appears in steps 6 through 8 on plants that require at least 75 and as many as 150 or more days of growing time, more than 8 hours of sunlight daily, and 2 or 3 or even more square feet of space. Each time you take a new step up in the garden, you'll step up the amount of resources you give the garden too. You don't have to follow the LRF system exactly, but as soon as you catch on to the connection between what your plant produces and what your plant needs, you'll no longer have to guess at your garden's success. All you'll have to do is grow with your plant. And even though we start with just one small step, you're still going to need a really big bowl. Part 2, leaves. All right. So I think that's an excellent place to end for tonight. And that will be a wonderful place to pick up on again next Sunday when we have begun tearing apart our lesson that will include the sprouts and microgreens, as well as a one-pot salad garden. Yes, a one-pot salad garden. All right, everyone. What did you all think about what was talked about? Is anybody excited about trying some of these things as we're talking through these different processes this November?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're still growing, of course. Are your cucumbers growing well, Kenda?
Yeah, one kind of looked like it was busted open, so I opened it up and took a bite, and it was good.
Very good. Very good. All right. So you're going to still grow some microgreens or sprouts, maybe both, even though you can still grow outside much more than someone like Benny in Massachusetts or myself here in Utah, right?
Yeah, well, see if the cucumbers keep on growing, and all the other stuff in the garden, just monitoring it, making sure I water it.
Absolutely. And so with having the ability to grow outside, when we're talking about those that are grown in the soil, oh gosh, let's go look at our definition again. I have such a hard time remembering that specific differentiation, right? Oh, what happened to our little search? Okay, so, all right. Which one? Sprouts can be put in water with no soil. Microgreens are soil. So with the microgreens, if you choose to do that, are you going to do it in the house or are you going to do it outside in your garden?
Um, I don't know. I'll probably try them both out just to see what would happen because I mean I got pots and I got soil.
Hmm.
I wouldn't mind trying it out, but
Right? Kind of interesting, right? And you don't even need pots until we get up to that one pot salad garden. You're talking about trays for the microgreens. And of course, we've already talked about that tonight. You've done the sprouts and you still have the little container, just as I do, right? Am I remembering that wrong? Was it a dream?
no, I have the container for
Okay, I thought so. Yours was very neat, quite different than my own, right? And so I do think I found it, but we won't worry about that tonight as we're going to get into that more tomorrow in class when we start tearing through the month of November for our garden planner. All right, super fun, super fun. What about everyone else? Are any of you interested in doing the sprouts and microgreens this November? Yes, Miss
I have a
Wendy.
question, Sabrina. How you doing?
Good,
How's
and
everything?
yourself?
I am in there. Thank you. Me and a friend was talking. He became like vegetarian. And we were talking about the different vegetables and plants and stuff that was like, healthy for like different properties and benefits that the
Hmm.
fruits and vegetables have. So he was saying that he doesn't eat anything that doesn't have seed because he doesn't feel that is natural because it grows from seed. What do you think about that?
I think that that's a pretty specific, kind of eclectic thought process.
Because I know there's like seedless watermelon, there's some seedless
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
cucumber.
don't really care when I'm buying it at the grocery store, but when I'm growing to grow it in my garden, I will go with those that have seeds. So in that regard, I do agree with your friend. Yeah, if that's what he means or she. I don't know.
But those things that doesn't have seed, would that be cross matched or something?
No,
Or
I
that
mean I don't. Oh, okay. So it's typically a hybridization.
yeah,
That's
that's what he was saying, that word. Yeah. I forgot it.
not a
That's what he was
problem.
saying.
It's not a GMO, right?
Okay.
Um, the GMOs that do make seed, you're not allowed to grow. You have to like basically burn those, throw them away, compost them without letting them germinate. That's why they have a patent on it. And you have to buy new seed every year. That's a different thing than what a hybrid is. And so it can happen in nature or it can be manually generated by human intervention, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Okay.
I agree with your friend as far as what to grow in the garden. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons to grow in a garden so that you're not having such even more natural styles of modification to your plants. Also, you have so much more variety available when you step off of the grocery store shelves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you interested in doing microgreens and or sprouts this November with us, Miss Wendy?
If I do microgreens, I don't consume greens like that. I seldomly. I'm starting now to get into good habits and to eating salads more.
So
Um,
just as a thought, because I had to do that as well. I did it for a little bit different reason. I knew I wanted to be a mother. And so in my early 20s, I started forcing myself to eat more raw vegetables. And what I
yeah,
really found
yeah.
out is that I just didn't like those that had really been offered to me most of my life. But any kind of small start that you can do, and you can't start much smaller than microgreens or sprouts, right? And just take a few pieces. When I was running a daycare, I would have the picky children eat 1 to 3 bites that were the size of a pencil eraser. Very
Really?
small pieces, just to become accustomed to that flavor, that texture,
Uh-huh.
all of that. And so start with 1 to 3 tiny microgreen or sprout leaves or one tiny sprout, right? Like just
A
start
sprout, would
slowly.
that be like grains or something? Like
Okay, so that's what we were just reading about, right? So let's go in since this is something that I'm relatively new to myself. I've read about it and I tried it out with the sprouts, but I was distracted probably and didn't pay enough attention and it didn't work out very well for us. So we're definitely going to try it again. And then that is without water. Or I mean without water, never without water, without soil. you don't have to have soil for microgreens. You can do it just in water. Oh my gosh, I can't speak.
Oh, really?
With
Okay.
sprouts, excuse me. With sprouts, you can do it just
Oh,
with water.
sprouts.
And then microgreens, it's almost like microgreens coming out of the soil. I don't know. There's really no way to, sprouts are something that happen when it's a seedling as well. It's sprouting, right? So it's
So
kind
sprout
of,
is like a seed, right?
well, a microgreen comes from a seed as well, though. So
Oh, okay.
sprouting is just something that you're going to eat the whole sprout. Microgreens grown in soil or a growing medium, the root is left behind with the microgreens grown in the soil. And they're known for more intense flavors, where, as it says, the sprouts are known more for adding crunch. They're both really great for you. And they're
Can you give me an
considered a
example?
living food because they're living when you eat them, right?
Can you give me an example of one?
The do you know what pho is?
Oh, no.
Okay, it's like an Asian noodle soup, and many different cultures have their own variation, and they have bean sprouts in.
Oh, okay. I know what bean sprouts are.
Okay, and so that was probably germinated in water.
Okay, I got
A
it.
microgreen grown in soil, I would need a picture to make sure that I'm right. Yes, okay, so a microgreen is more like what you get from those little plastic boxes at the grocery store that have a variety of like radish microgreens.
Oh, microgreens is not like artisan lettuce or something?
No,
Oh,
probably not.
okay.
Radish, clover. There were some less common ones here in these microgreens that I have seedlings for. So mustard purple wave, another mustard, a kale, a kohlrabi.
Oh,
And
those are microgreens.
well, but there's different kinds of microgreens.
Got
So
it.
it all depends on really what you're interested in doing. And that's basically what that article talked about. So you might go in and have your device play that article for you again, Wendy, if you're
Yes.
interested in it, so that
Yes.
you can hear that part again
Okay.
about picking the seeds for it.
Okay.
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 And that was about microgreens, not the sprouts, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Very cool. And how about you, Miss Vanessa? And let's check out the chat for Benny here. See if he's answered about whether he's interested in joining in there. Looks like it. Yep, he's interested. Very nice. Very nice. And Miss Vanessa? Oh, she said she couldn't talk. Maybe she can put it in the chat. And maybe not, right? She might have something going on. She sounded a little bit introspective tonight when we were talking before class started. So, all right, guys, let's jump back into Collectively Rewilding and check out our calendar for the next upcoming class. And so that will be tomorrow. And I need to get the titling and the picture all changed out. I thought I had already done this. So this is going to be our Plan Your Wild workshop. And so I need to get the image and the title changed over, but that is going to be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Mountain, 8:30 p.m. Central, and 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you all there, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you as well, Benny. Please feel free to unmute and say good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Bye, guys. Hope to see you all tomorrow.